Hi, Jasmine. We're going to go ahead and take a look at your emphasis project and give you a little bit of observational feedback here. So let's just jump right into it. So we'll kind of take a look at how we post it, sort of moving through the various structures. Looks all in order. Thank you. That's, believe it or not, that is something that is an issue for some in terms of organizing and getting things prepared and presented in a way. That's a skill that that you have to learn, and if you don't already use that skill or know how to do those things, it can be a struggle to be able to work within a certain kind of framework. So just looking at what we're presented with here on the longer scope, meaning just like in these smaller thumbnails, what am I observing? What are some of the things that I'm looking at? Because, the specifics about the objective of the project, we covered that in that overview video earlier. Now this, I want to kind of get into more about the specifics of your images, maybe compositions or some overall things that I'm looking at here that I can identify. And one of the things that I'm seeing is the use of shape in your photograph seems to be pretty strong, as well as the use of the leading line. And so, for instance, the use of the leading line is going on almost in every one of these images. So, for instance, here we have shape and leading line really emphasizing and dominating the photographs. This is the very first photograph. You've got that strong curve of the sidewalk, of course. This line really moves us, and that is a leading line because it gets smaller as it goes. And then you have this large shape that is created by that because it goes off the edge. Goes off the edge. And so you have this very dominant shape here. You chose well to let the horizon be sort of in that upper part of the phi grid. You didn't know about the phi grid, or at least we didn't have a name for that if you didn't know what that was. But you're incorporating it anyway. So that tells me that maybe intuitively, maybe just subconsciously, naturally, you're using that as an element. Here you went for more symmetry, and that's an interesting thing because looking at the photograph that you chose, the perspective that you chose, there's a lot of busyness back there, right? There's a lot of stuff that's happening. There's cars and there's signs and there's light posts, and there's actually a lot of noise right back there. And so what do you do? What do you do when you have all of that stuff? Well, what you've done is you've placed a dominant element smack dab in the middle of the photograph and made it large. It's the largest element in the entire image. You've made it perfectly symmetrical in terms of where it's placed. And so all of our attention goes to it. Also, because of your perspective, where you stood, you've got this line and this line. It's all pointing. Everything's pointing at the tree. So all of this noise, this background garbage, basically sort of starts to disappear. Now, we could have taken that farther if you used some of the controls on your camera, which you may or may not be aware of or how to use. Using a shallow depth of field means that if we were able to let that focus fall off very quickly from the tree, as it hits the tree, the clear focus, as it continues back into space, it falls off quickly and makes that area very soft. That's where we want to happen. That would make it actually even more of a strong image. Again, leading lines, these lead us, they're converging off to the side. You did a pretty good job of keeping these out of the corner. We'll talk about that in a minute, but that's a good thing that you didn't put either of these poles right to the center here. And then streaming it back around. Now we're getting into more of like the portrait kind of mode, or in terms of identifying something as being what you're looking at or you want us to be looking at. Same thing here. You've got, again, he's got these leading lines that are pulling us right into the image. So you really are working with this depth kind of concept here, moving us back and forth. Snow is a really kind of interesting thing because it kind of blanks everything out for us. It kind of takes the noise I was talking about before and sort of erases all of it, because you lose any like variation in the ground and textures and that kind of thing. So the snow can be really a good thing to make photographs in. It can also be a headache because of the reflections that it causes. There you go again. You happen to find, a pathway, the line. So I mean, it is a tendency that you have. It is something that I think you could probably start to think about in terms of subtlety, how you can incorporate it in a variety of ways. Here you've done more symmetry with the sky and the ground being balanced. How can that be altered, making choices with the top and the bottom there? You're very, very structured in your images as well. You can tell that you're looking at the entire picture plane. You're looking at these edges, like what is here and what is over here and how is it looking? Is this just right down here? All of that is really, really helpful, because when in photography, it's all about what you don't put in there. Because as you move in and move just subtly, you are deselecting things just as much as you are selecting things. So this little bit back here, where am I? This little bit back here with this stuff, you've made it less noticeable because of the strength of this, and then you've got it kind of curving back in like this way. You've made very, very deliberate choices to turn us around here. So all of those things are really excellent qualities in the photography that you're doing. Now, I do want to kind of come down here and point out one of those things where it does kind of get in trouble just a little bit, and that's on this one. Not that one. It is. Oh, come on, give it to us. There it is. So it's on this one, and so we have a couple of things happening here that kind of trips this image up a little bit. So I'm only pointing it out so that we can identify these things, and then you can sort of be on the lookout for them as you continue to make images. The first is human beings. When people are in photographs, our eyes want to go to it. It's just natural for us to, we human beings like to identify other human beings as the subject. So when you include a human being, just know that our eyes are going to want to go to it. It's very difficult to separate that person from being the subject. There could be lots of people, but people will take over the subject if they're in there. And so she's faced away. She's not really positioned in any kind of special way. It's not clear that she is consciously a part of your image. So that is something that you want to really be conscious of and think about when you do these imagery. You are really paying attention to this stuff, and it's absolutely beautiful the way you've organized it. Now we do have this shadow that is kind of bringing itself to the corner here. And so this is what I was talking about, where I said you did a really good job in the other one, where those lines kind of wound up here and then down here. So what happens when you do, or you wind up with a line here, what happens is you create tension right in that corner, because that's a high energy place in any piece of artwork, in the photograph too. So if I had a blank image, meaning no photograph at all, it was just a blank piece of paper, let's say, and you had the square or the rectangle, it would be the corners that are the most interesting part of that blank rectangle, right? I've got this square right here. The most interesting thing about it are these four corners, because they change directions. So immediately we know that we're not as obligated to address those corners and activate them as we would some of the other areas, because it has built-in energy. So while we want to pay attention to the corners, we don't want to just forget them. We also don't want to deliberately call attention to them, because that will create energy upon energy. So by having a line or a point of high contrast, as you have here, aiming right to the corner, it pulls our eyes there, which I'm sure you didn't want us to be doing. So that's just a little bit of a hint as to what you might not want to do later on. The people as your subject, and then also those corners, addressing the corners. Now, on these last two, it does seem like at that point, you're as you see it, and there's like all the rules went out the window. I can almost just hear you asking me the question, well, what am I supposed to do? How do I make photographs of things that are so close up, they're not in focus, and that kind of thing? Because knowing you and having talked to you, you're very analytical, you're very precise about what you do. You like to make sense of it. You like to have like, okay, here's what I'm supposed to do, and here's how I want to go ahead and solve it. And, here you're faced with something that is so wide open. You're not even meant to have a photograph that's in focus, or necessarily have a subject in it, or things like that. So it can be rather challenging for someone who is so precise the way that you are with your work. So that's a good thing that you're very careful and you're very precise. But we do want to practice the other element of kind of freeing yourself up and just kind of playing with completely the opposite, without fear or without any kind of self-judgment or anything like that. Just do something that you're terrible at and work at it, and laugh at yourself sometimes, and all of those kinds of things. This will keep your mind working. This will kind of help balance out all of the other things that are going on with your work. And in whether you know it or not, it will inform the really highly structured stuff. It'll help give it more life and give it more energy as you continue to make it. So I think you have a lot going on for these first project here. I think you have a really keen eye for structure. Of course, those lines, you're going to do really well with our line project that's coming up. So I really look forward to seeing more of your images, and we'll see you in class. All right, bye now.